credo in unum Deum, Patrem omnipotente, Factorem celi et terrae, visibili omnium, et invisibili.
Today, for this month, our topic is what?
Sacramental vows.
We are still under Sacramentals, but the topic is Vows. Today, our topic is Vows. And vows and oaths go together. So we're going to be taking vows and oaths. Vows and oaths. A vow is a deliberate and free promise made to God. A deliberate and free promise made to God about a possible action or a possible thing which is of greater good. About a possible action or a possible thing which is of greater good. While an oath is the act of calling on God to witness a particular truth or a particular action which has taken place in the past or is taking place in the present. So to distinguish the two, a vow is you promising to do something or to give something to God. While an oath is calling God to be a witness to something that you are saying or something you are doing. From the definition of vow itself, there are 4 basic elements. It has to be deliberate, it has to be freely made, it has to be something possible, and it has to be something that is of greater good. These 4 elements are important. Deliberate, free, possible, and of greater good. When you make a vow, let's take it one by one. But before then, let's briefly look at the different types of vows. You have a public vow and a private vow. A public vow is a vow that is received by a legitimate superior. A legitimate superior. If it is not received by a legitimate superior, it is a private vow. Then you also have the distinction between solemn and simple vow. If the process of making that vow is the one that has been recognized by the church, it becomes a solemn vow. If it is not the one recognized by the church, it's something that you just decided on your own, it becomes a simple vow. So now let's go back to the 4 basic elements. Number 1, a vow has to be deliberate, in the sense that you did not make it by mistake. Not that, let me give you an example of a vow. Let's say a solemn vow and a simple vow. anybody taking a solemn vow would have at least known the implication of the solemn vow. Like the Reverend Sister, for instance, who is making a vow of poverty, of chastity, and obedience, would have at least gone through some training to know the implication. And then that vow is received by either the superior of that congregation or they invite the bishop to receive it. That becomes a public vow. But when you tell yourself that if God gives you that contract you are looking for, and God, you come to the church and say, God, if I get that contract I'm looking for, I am going to pay the school fees of 10 children in this church, or this block that has fallen from this fence, I'm going to replace the block, I'm going to build it back. It has to be deliberate in the sense that it's not when you are gisting with your friends or when they call you to say the director has received the application, say, hey, thank God, if this application through, I will build back that fence. It has to be deliberate. That is, you mean what you are saying. That is one. Number two, it has to be freely given. If as you apply for the contract and then the director is the younger brother of the parish priest, I will not tell you, the only way I can sign this contract is that you vow to be the chairman of the harvest for my brother's parish, and you say, okay, that is not wasn't freely given. You were compelled to give it. So it has to be free, it has to be deliberate. Then it has to be possible. It has to be possible. If you say, if God blesses me or gives me this contract, I'm going to build a church here at Vivian Ogun, and then God blesses you, I will now discover that it is impossible to build a church on this kind of soil. You cannot be held accountable for that vow, because the vow you made, it is not possible, it's not within your own reach to execute that vow. If you say, if God blesses me, I am going to send this person abroad for treatment, and you are not the one giving visa. If they deny the person visa, it means that it's not your vow, it's not possible for you to fulfill your vow. So it is to be something possible, and then something of a higher good for that vow to be binding. If you tell yourself that if God gives you that contract, you are going to make sure that you bribe the director of your in-laws, of your in-law, so that they will sack her from her place of work. When I have this money, I'll just take 1 million inside, go and give her director. The director will just sack her. Then all those gabu gabu she's doing, let me see. That your vow is not of higher good. So it is not valid. So these three has to be present. It has to be deliberate, it has to be free, it has to be possible, it has to be of the higher good. A vow by nature of the vow itself obliges you to fulfill that vow. That is why in treating vows, the Catechism of the Catholic Church puts it under the commandment, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain. It puts it under that. So whenever you make a vow to God, promise to God. When we're talking about a vow now, it is a vow to God or a promise to God. When you make a promise to God and you don't fulfill it, it means that you are taking the name of the Lord in vain. Now, even when a vow is valid, In what form can we say that the vow will cease? The obligation to fulfill that vow will cease. There are certain conditions that will make the obligation for you to fulfill a particular vow to be fulfilled. Before then, it is important to let you know that a vow can only be it is the one who makes a vow that is obliged to fulfill the vow. You cannot make a vow for someone else and expect the person to fulfill that vow. For instance, some person will say, I vow to God that if he gives me a male child, the person will become a reverend father. The male child is a human being. It is that male child becoming, except you are saying that if God gives you a male child, you will become this. For you to now say the male child will become, that male child is not bound by the vow that you made. A vow is only binds the person who made that vow. So you can only say, if God gives me a male child, I will put the person in the minor seminary. But what if by the time you are making that vow, you are working in Ministry of Health, your salary is 150,000. God now gives you a male child and you are sacked. You have no job. You are begging to even feed. It's no longer possible. What if you make that vow, that child writes an exam or write entrance for 5 years, writing one class or minor seminary and did not pass? You cannot force the person to the minor seminary. You must go through certain requirements. So it's not possible for you. And then, if you now make that vow, you now put the person there. The person will now say, instead of me to go to minor seminary, I will not go to school at all. The person is not obliged to follow. You now start crying and say, I made a vow that this boy will become Reverend Father. The boy now is not cooperating. It now becomes a problem to you. You cannot make a vow for another person. Now, even when you make the vow for yourself and it was valid, there are certain conditions that will make the vow. So for you to be dispensed or for the burden of fulfilling that vow to cease. One of them is by a substantial change of the matter promised. You promise, we started building a church here, and you promise that when God blesses you, you are going to do the decking of this church. And then, by the time you are getting the contract now, we have changed the plan. There is no more decking. You see it? There is already a substantial change to the promise that you made. If your promise is, I will be the one to deck this church. Even if you say, I will be the one to build the church here, by the time you are done with the contract, the bishop says, no, you are not going to have church in this place. There is already a change in the whole thing. So when that substantial change occurs, the obligation on you ceases. Secondly, by the absence of a condition on which the vow depends. The condition on which the vow depends. You are earning 200,000 naira, and based on that, you now come and vow to God, I will be giving you 30,000 naira or 50,000 naira every month. Now you have lost that job of 200,000 and you are managing with a job of 25,000. You can no longer be giving God 50,000 because that vow was based on the salary that you are receiving. So, when the condition on which the vow depends ceases, the obligation to the vow ceases. The third one is by the absence of the purpose of the vow. Let's say somebody is sick in this church. The person needs, the person is doing dialysis. You now say, God, if you bless me with this contract, I'm going to take care of the dialysis of this person for the next 1 year. And before you finish the contract, the person dies. There's no more dialysis. So there's absence of the purpose of that vow is no longer there. Then, even when all these are still present, one can be dispensed from a vow that he or she has made. So, by virtue of dispensation and what we call commutation, the obligation to the vow can cease. How is this dispensation made? How is this dispensation made? There are persons who can dispense you if these conditions are not ones, the lack of the conditions that I mentioned here is not the one removing that obligation. There are certain authorities that can also dispense you even when these conditions are present. The first one is the Holy Father. The second one is the local ordinary or the pastor, that is the priest. The Pope, the bishop, or the priest, or any other person that the Pope has delegated to can dispense you and say, you have made this vow of 50,000 naira every month to God. The priest can dispense you from that vow. It will no longer become a sin if you don't keep the vow. Apart from that, dispensation, you can also have what we call commutation. Commutation means instead of fulfilling the particular vow that you made, you can transfer or use another thing to supply for that vow. For instance, if you say, I am going to build this church here if I get this contract, that is your vow. Commutation means that instead of church, you now go and build Father's house. That is made of commutation. Now, who are those that have the power to absorb you from this church to now say use the money for parish house? If any of the conditions I mentioned before is the reason why you cannot execute that church that you promised, then you don't need to meet anybody. But if all those conditions are still there, you still have the capability, the church is still being built, and nothing has changed, you can approach the Pope, the bishop, or the priest and say, I made a vow to build the church. Now I don't feel like building it again. I want communication. So the priest can say, commutation, either dispensation or commutation. Dispensation means you are not doing anything again. Commutation means, okay, I want to use, instead of church, and now I want to build grotto. I want to build a parish house. If the priest can do that, the bishop can do that, the pope can do that. But if what you are spending the money on or the act you want to carry out is of a higher good, you yourself can do that commutation without any reference to the priest, the bishop, or the pope. For instance, you plan to build, you said, when this church gets to roofing level, I am going to be the one to roof it because of what God has blessed me with. If you now decide that I want to build the entire church, that is already commutation. But it is of a higher value and higher good than only the roof. So you don't need to meet anybody. But if you have vowed to God that you want to build the entire church, now you want to commit it to only roof, you see, then you have to meet the priest, the bishop, for them to do that commutation. Whether a vow is public, whether it is private, whether it is solemn, whether it is simple, we have obligation to keep to our vows. And that is why we should not make vows anyhow. Before you, that's like, it should be deliberate. Deliberate. Not that you just come to church and then there's program, everybody is there, they're just speaking in tongues, and then you just say, just make the vow. No. Think about your vow before you make that vow to God, because of the obligation of keeping to the vows that one has made. The same for oath. Taking an oath means you are calling on the name of the Lord to witness to what you are saying. To witness to what you are saying. If you make that oath out of malice, if you make that oath out of force or fear, it is null and void. And if that oath is based on lies, it is null and void. So someone cannot say you made an oath of any sort, because if you were forced to make that oath, it is null and void. And one of the oaths we make every Sunday is the I believe in God. Whenever you profess your faith, you are making an oath. Whenever you say I believe in God, you are making an oath. So when you not do anything that violates that, you know, in catechism class those days, when catechists be talking about article of the faith, you're wondering which all this article of the article, it doesn't look as if they are just trying to stress somebody. But it is the article of the faith that tells you the detailed implications of the oath that you are making whenever you make that profession of faith, whenever you say, I believe in God. And that is why, because oath is a very serious thing, you can see where when you are singing that I believe in God, it's not meant to the choir is singing and then you are dancing without paying particular attention to the words of the song, because each time you say it, you are taking an oath before God. So whether a vow or an oath, anyone who makes them is bound to fulfill them. Failure to do so is a sin in the eyes of God. Thank you. So, as usual, questions, contributions, clarifications? Yes. Number 2, there's always somebody behind you. Good, I'll go and give the person standing.
Morning, Father.
Morning, God.
And the question I want to ask is in respect to oath taking. And in line with the Catholic priesthood. Assuming there is someone who is in the seminary already and the person secretly has a child that is not known to the church to the point of ordination, to the diaconate ordination, and after that priestly ordination, and the person is ordained. Is that ordination valid in respect to this oath that you just told us? Is that ordination valid? Because in the Roman rites of the church that the Nigerian church is under, the priest is not supposed to have a child. Not in other rites, but in the Roman rite. So if a seminarian who is ordained, a deacon and a priest, having a child before that ordination, is that ordination valid? Glory to Jesus.
My answer is every other thing being equal, ordination is valid. Yes. Having a child does not invalidate ordination. What makes ordination valid is the prayer of consecration and the laying on of hands. That is the basic thing that makes ordination valid. So when you talk about validity of sacraments, you have to separate it from the oath you are talking about. A priest is required to take the oath of obedience, chastity, and poverty. Those are the three. Chastity, what now? Obedience, and poverty. So, whenever the priest breaks that oath, it is a sin. It doesn't invalidate the ordination of the priest. It is a sin. So the priest has to go for confession. Like you go for confession when you make your oath to your wife. That you make your oath to your wife and you break that fidelity. You go for confession now. Does it invalidate the marriage? No, the marriage is invalid. So it is with the priest. So if the priest breaks the oath of any of the three oaths, he goes for confession. If my bishop tells me, I'm transferring you to so place, and I say I'm not going, and then I stay on my own, have I not broken the oath of obedience? So that does not mean that I'm no longer a priest. Anytime I come to my senses, and I'll not say sorry, I will not go for confession now, then I will continue my work. Yeah. Yes, so it doesn't invalidate what we are talking about. It doesn't invalidate what you are saying. And having a child does not invalidate the priesthood. No, it does not. It does not. What can invalidate the priesthood relating to that is even somebody who has it's priesthood that invalidates marriage, not the other way around. You see, it's priesthood that invalidates marriage, not the other way around. That is why even in the Eastern rite, where they can marry, you are required to marry before the priesthood. You are required to marry before you become a priest. That's the side where they marry. So it doesn't invalidate. When you say invalidate means that the person is not a priest. He was never a priest. That means they just added fame that day. When you use that word invalidate, it's very serious. When you use that word invalidate, even the person that has committed, there are some crime you can commit. They say they dismiss the person from the priesthood. Let's put it like that. Even when the person is dismissed from the priesthood, at the point of death, the person can still perform that role. If the person carries bread and carries wine and does mass, it still remains body and blood of Christ. If the person hears confession, the sin of the person that he heard the confession on is removed. That's why a priest is a priest forever. So there's a difference between being a priest and exercising your faculty as a priest. There are two different things. But when you use that word invalidate, it's very serious. For either baptism, marriage, priesthood, it's a very serious step. Number 2.
But I want to find out,
to vow have spiritual consequences. And again,
Spiritual consequences.
yes. Again, during marriages, couples usually take vow at the altar that they will accept children as given by God, and that they will be prepared to bring them up in the Catholic way. Sometimes they will leave the Catholic Church, and the children given to them, they may not bring them up in the Catholic way again. I think they have committed sin. And what shall be the fate of the church and those people, since they have not been able to keep the vow?
Yeah, when you break your vow, it's a sin. That is obvious. I just said, under which commandment? Under which commandment? Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord. There are 10 commandments now. That one is just one of it. So the same way somebody stole is a sin. Someone told lies is a sin. So when you also break your vow, it's a sin. So when you say the faith of the church, in the same way, we don't arrest those who tell lies now. Abi? Those who tell lies, we tell them that it's a sin. If they don't go for confession and you die in mortal sin, you go to hell. Abi? But we are not the one judging, it's not God that will judge the person. The same way, if you break your vow, the spiritual effect it has is that you have committed a sin. The same way any other sin damages your relationship with God, so that same sin damages your relationship with God. There's no special sanction to say because you broke that vow and you are going to be. For the marriage vow, the same thing. Whenever, if you, that's why he said, deliberate, free, possible. If you say you are going to bring your children up according to the laws of God and His church, and then you now give birth to a very stubborn boy, you tell him, come here, you think the school you say to go, you need to go. Stay one way, will not stay. Come to church, he refuse. That means it's not possible. That boy now it's impossible to you. You have done your own question. It's only when there's negligence on your part. Maybe it's time for infant baptism, you did not do it. To put the boy in baptism, you didn't do it. Then when the boy now gets to 14, 15 years, now fighting you, you now want to be reported to the priest to invite him for catechism class. That is negligence. But if you do your part and the person now decides to be wayward, you have done your best. You have done your best. Yes. Which one? About what?
If I have
Spiritual consequence. I've answered it now. The same spiritual consequence other sins have when you tell lies, when you keep malice, when you don't come to church on Sunday. It's the same. That's the same thing now. You broke the commandment now. So it's the spiritual consequence. When you go to confession, the spiritual consequence is no longer there. When you meet a priest to absolve you of the vow, the spiritual consequence is no longer there. But if you don't do all this and you don't keep to your vow, it's mortal sin.
Father, my question is, there's one church, it's a Catholic church in Virginia. They are building new churches. So already the whole thing have finished. Remain the fixing of the remain the fixing of the windows. So the father in charge, one day like that, one Sunday like that, they announced to the congregation that they should start donating the money for the windows. So many people are coming out donating some 2 windows, some 3 windows, some 4, some 1. So but still the windows still have to have 3 or 4 to complete. So this father went direct to one man, pick him up, take him to the altar, ask the man to donate for us. I don't know whether this might happen or not. Understand me? And the man, as he sees, as you see the man that day, even the man don't have money to feed. So out of shame, the man promised to donate 1 million. So if this man now fell,
No, that's not the vow. You can see for yourself now. he brought the man out. The man did not donate what others were donating. Unfortunately for the man, maybe he won't find cloth that day. That is not a vow. It was not freely given. It was not freely given. So you don't compel somebody to make a vow. It has to be freely given. Any other one?
Father, please, I just want to ask this question. Let's assume someone make a vow privately that is going to give, say anything happens to her or whatever she's expecting or is expecting, they will give 100,000 to the church. But maybe because of situation or uncertainty when the money comes, he was unable to bring down 100,000 and the person brought 50 out of it. That is between herself and God as the person committed anything.
Now, the money the person was expecting actually came. But other things now came up that the person did not anticipate, right? Yes, the person ought to have asked for communication. Yes. Because the money you were expecting came. But what came up, you didn't anticipate it. Let's say you're expecting 1 million or 10 million. Tell God, if I get this 10 million, I'm going to give church 100,000. It's not that the money did not come. It's not that, I don't know how to put it now. But when it now came, your cousin now had accident and they needed huge money to treat that your cousin. When you say computation, it's not a big deal. It's just to meet the priest. I made this vow in church for this, but now it's also something has this. That is it. You cannot do the computation. However, he says if the computation is of a higher good, I think with that condition, you don't even need to meet any priest. On the example I just gave you, saving life is of a higher good than donating window in church. Just following the example I gave now. But if, let's say, after promising that thing now, they just passing, just saw somebody that wants to sell land, and the man said that land is 10.4 million, and you know that the value of that land is 20 million, and now the 10 million has come. You see it now. You cannot tell the truth. Oh, I promise God 100,000, but if I don't buy this land now, it will be a problem. So please, absolve me of that thing. Let me just give church 5,000 first, and let me give God 5,000. Then I will now buy that land. But if it's on saving life, or that one is higher good. Just like when you are coming to church now and you met somebody who had an accident, you can, if you take the person to hospital and because of that you did not meet up with mass, you have not committed murder sin. It's of higher good. Yeah? So thank you very much. So before we make any vows, especially during programs, where they say, stand up, if you want to do this one, come out. Before you make it, be sure that you have the capacity to make it. Otherwise, it will be taking the name of the Lord in vain. And if you are among those that we go and organize a program, and you now call people out and say, God has told me that 5 people will give so in this church. If you know are going to be among them, please don't cajole people to make vows. Vows must be freely given. It must be a very great act. Thank you very much, and God bless you. What did you ask question on? You stood up like someone that was expression in mind since that you used to talk. Your day program,
Man of God told you that maybe one man of God told you that if you finish this house, and God said you will bring a cow.
He's the one saying the vision. So please don't be compared to fulfill the vision of others. Don't. Anybody tells you God said that I should tell you to tell the person, let God tell you where the money will come from, please. It's very simple. Nobody should tell you God said no. God can never compel you to the impossible. Can never compel you. Even when it is possible for you, if it doesn't come up in your mind, don't do it. Don't do it. Because when people look your car, they look your dressing, they look your face. Very women who do makeup, you makeup. You now look like a first lady. When you get to program now, you enter trouble. See, so don't let them look at your face to give you assignment. What you have, give to God. What you have, give to God. If you don't have, clap for those who are giving. It's okay. You understand now? So there's nobody, God can never punish you when He knows that you don't have that capacity or you don't have the money at all. Is it so wicked? He will not be punishing you for not giving what you don't have. It's not possible now. Our God is a loving God, so He cannot be forcing you to do what is not possible for you to do. So give according to your capacity. Thank you very much. May God give us the grace to fulfill our vows through Christ our Lord. Amen. Let us rise. The Lord be with you. May God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.